Namaste, Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane, Namaste Saraswatam Deve, Kauravani Vicharane, Nirvishesha Srinivadi Paskadyade. So welcome everyone. Today I'm going to read from the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 9, the most confidential knowledge, text number 12. Mogaisha Moga Karmano, Moga Gyana Vichetasaha, Rakshasim Asrim Chaiva, Prakritim Mohinim Shritaha. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami to the Prabhupada. Let me put earplugs in here. Does it sound better with the earplugs?
Certainly better.
Good. Purport. Oh, let me read the translation again. Those who are thus bewildered are attracted by demoniac and atheistic views. In that deluded condition, their hopes for liberation, their fruitive activities, and their culture of knowledge are all defeated. Srila Prabhupada's purport. There are many devotees who assume themselves to be in Krishna consciousness and devotional service, but at heart do not accept the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, as the absolute truth. For them, the fruit of devotional service, going back to Godhead, will never be tasted. Similarly, those who are engaged in fruitive pious activities and who are ultimately hoping to be liberated from this material entanglement will never be successful either, because they deride the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. In other words, persons who mock Krishna are to be understood to be demoniac or atheistic. As described in the 7th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, such demoniac miscreants never surrendered to Krishna. Therefore, the mental speculations to arrive at the absolute truth bring them to the false conclusion that the ordinary living entity and Krishna are one and the same. With such a false conviction, they think that the body of any human being is now simply covered by material nature, and that as soon as one is liberated from this material body, there is no difference between God and himself. This attempt to become one with Krishna will be baffled because of delusion. Such atheistic and demoniac cultivation of spiritual knowledge is always futile. This is the indication of this verse. For such persons, cultivation of knowledge in the Vedic literature, like the Vedanta Sutra and the Upanishads, is always baffled. It is a great offense, therefore, to consider Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, to be an ordinary man. Those who do so are certainly deluded because they cannot understand the eternal form of Krishna. The Brihad Vishnu Smriti clearly states, Yo veti bodhikam deham Krishnasya paramatmanaha sa sarvasmad vahiskarya Chota smarta vidanataha muktam tasya valokyapi sachelam snanam acharat. One who considers the body of Krishna to be material, to be driven out from all rituals and activities of Shruti and the Smriti. And if by chance one sees his face, one should at once take bath in the Ganges to rid himself of infection. People jeer at Krishna because they are envious of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Their destiny is certainly to take birth after birth in the species of atheistic and demoniac life. Perpetually the real knowledge will remain under delusion, and gradually they will regress to the darkest region of creation. So the text again, Mogaisha Moka Karmano, Moka Jnana Vichetasaha, Rakshasim Asrim Chaiva, Prakritim Mohinim Shritaha. Translation, those who are thus bewildered are attracted by demoniac and atheistic views. In that deluded condition, their hopes for liberation, their fruitive activities, and their culture of knowledge are all defeated. So this verse follows from the previous verse. Avijananti mamudha manushim tanum ashityam param bhavam ajanato ama bhutam maheshwaram. Fools deride me when I descend in the human form. They do not know my transcendental nature of the Supreme Lord of all that be. And previous to that verse, Krishna had stated, Maya dakshena prakriti siyate characharam hetu no nona kondiya jagati parivartate. This material nature, which is one of my energies, is working under my direction, O son of Kunti, producing all moving and non-moving beings. Under its rule, this manifestation is created and annihilated again and again. In other words, anyone who's taken birth in the material world has taken birth, generally speaking, because of one's previous activities. And as Krishna had said in the Bhagavad Gita, that as soon as one comes, jayate vishayam punsam, sangas teshu pujayate, sangas sanjayate kama, kama krodo pujayate. That anyone in the material world, or everyone in the material world, is looking for happiness. Because by nature, we're seeking happiness. Even knowledge is simply an understanding of what will give us happiness. And everyone has a certain amount of knowledge. Even the amoeba, when he sees another amoeba, he understands that if he devours that amoeba, he'll feel happy. Therefore, even the amoeba is looking for happiness in his own way. When one comes to the human form of life, one certainly is seeking happiness, but there's different varieties of possibility. Now, the idea that happiness is found in a relationship is not unusual, because as Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, yad yad acharya shrestas tat tat eve taro janaha yat pramanam kurute lokas tad anuvartate. That everyone has to choose a leader. In other words, anyone who's bigger, faster, smarter, richer, or whatever else more than we are, naturally becomes our leader. And if one's conception of life is material, there must be some concept of maybe becoming bigger or faster or smarter or wealthier or stronger, something that will attract one, that will promise one some kind of happiness. So one, naturally, if one wants to become stronger, there are persons in this material world who can teach one how to become stronger. And generally speaking, there are people who are stronger than we are. Prabhupada gives the example of one horses trying to cross a river, very fast river. So very big, strong horses went into the river, and got swept away by the current. Finally, all the horses, the big strong horses, were swept away by the current of the river, and one very thin, weak horse decided that he himself is going to make the attempt and see if he can do it. Now, all the big strong horses couldn't do it, but this weak horse is believing he might be able to do it. So in the material world, generally speaking, we try to find someone who's superior to us, and then we follow them in order to achieve whatever we want to achieve in the material world. Rarely does one act like the skinny horse and try to do something which no one else can do. Everyone needs a leader who's better than they are in something. Therefore, when Krishna comes, and he comes as a cowherd boy in Vrindavan, most people in this material world, and even those who perhaps even saw Krishna or associated with him, could not really believe that he was the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Even Brahma, the most intelligent person in this universe, who was so intelligent that under Krishna's guidance, he's created the universe. Still, he could not believe that Krishna was the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and therefore he stole Krishna's cowherd boys and calves and kept them hidden for 1 year. Even Indra, who's controlling all the clouds in the universe, the king of the demigods, he could not accept that this cowherd boy was the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And what to speak of ordinary persons in this material world. Because, as Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Naham prakasha sarvasha yogamaya samavrita buddhoyam navijananti lokayam ajam aviyam. That Krishna is never manifest to the foolish and unintelligent. For them, he's covered by his creative energy, and therefore the deluded world knows him not, who is unborn and inexhaustible. So although Krishna would like to reveal himself, but he only reveals himself to those who are qualified. And what's the major qualification? Idam tute guyatamam pravaksham anashuyave. Krishna says in the beginning of this 9th chapter that he's going to reveal himself the most confidential 2 kinds of knowledge. One knowledge is theoretical, which is what the Bhagavad Gita is, for one who just reads Bhagavad Gita, and experienced, realized knowledge. To who? To one who's not envious of Krishna. Now, we may think, I'm not envious of Krishna, or my friends are not envious of Krishna, because it's very difficult to be envious of someone you don't believe in. Just like there are many comics, Superman, Batman, whatever. Now, people are not envious of Superman because they don't believe he exists. It is simply an amusing story for children and perhaps for adults. Similarly, one may not be envious of Krishna because one believes that Krishna is just a fantasy, a myth. Rather unusual myth. He had unusual friends, such as Brahma with 4 heads, or Shiva with 3 eyes. And it's an interesting story. He was born in the prison because his parents were criminals. And somehow or another, he escaped from the prison and grew up as a little child. He had some very bad tendencies. For instance, he killed the first person who came to give him milk, a nurse. He killed her. And then he grew up leading a life of crime. Matter of fact, all the animals in Vrindavan, whether it be a snake, Agasura, or a bull, Aristasura, or even a horse, Keshi, they were all killed by this boy. And he formed his own mafia, who went around Vrindavan stealing from all the neighbors. And later on, he became a playboy in Vrindavan, attracted all the young girls. And as soon as they became serious, he escaped to Mathura to continue his life of crime there. So one may look at Krishna's life, and if one believes it was just a story, one will not become envious of Krishna. One will simply think that Krishna's devotees are a bunch of fools or crazy people. That's why they get up in the morning and instead of putting on normal clothes, they wear their bed sheets. And if you ask them any question, the only answer they ever come up with is chant Hare Krishna. And they play some instruments on the street and jump up and down in order to survive. So people may think like that Krishna consciousness is some kind of silly religion, maybe laughable, and that their hero is an Aborigine cowherd boy. So that's not so bad, because otherwise those who are in control of modern society, if they understood who Krishna actually was, they may take it more seriously than they do. To think that this cowherd boy is controlling, as it says in the purport, both the infinite and the minute is a little bit overwhelming to understand what to speak of believing. Therefore, only by devotional service, as Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Bhakti Amam Abhijananti, Yasmin, Bhakti Mam Abhijananti, Tasmin, Bhakti Mam Abhijananti, Yavanyas Tasvi Tatvataha, Tato Mam Tatvato Gyatva, Vishite Tat Anantaram. It's only by practicing devotional service that one can actually understand Krishna as he is. In other words, Krishna reciprocates our devotional service to him. And if devotional service is performed correctly, then it becomes experienced. Krishna becomes experienced. That experience is illumination and transcendental happiness, which is eternal, not material, but is actually spiritual. So by the process of bhakti, and of course Krishna has also said in the next chapter, much chitta, much kata prana, bodhiyantas parashparam, katayantas tramam nityam tushanti charamanti cha. That the thoughts of my pure devotees, they dwell in me. So that's the first thing, is utilizing our chitta, our consciousness, to think about Krishna. To think about what is the process by which we become conscious of Krishna. So those who are taking Krishna seriously, they not only hear that Krishna is pastimes, but what is the process of actually experiencing Krishna? Sometimes the devotees, they practice devotional service as mentioned here in Srila Prabhupada's purport, where he says, there are many devotees who assume themselves to be in Krishna consciousness and devotional service, but at heart do not accept the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, as the absolute truth. They take the devotional service, but they don't take the process very seriously. In other words, they remain attached to material desires and hope that Krishna will fulfill them in some way or another. Even when Krishna was here 5,000 years ago, his own devotees didn't take him seriously. Even they witnessed amazing activities, Krishna swallowing the fire in the forest, Krishna defeating Argasura, Trinavarta, Dhenukasura, big, powerful personalities and demons. And yet his own associates thought that Krishna is wonderful. Maybe he's even a demigod. But in Vrindavan, under the influence of Yogamaya, the devotees never think that he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because that would spoil their loving relationship with him. And in the material world, Krishna also offers to the aspiring devotees, or those practicing devotional service, that they could practice devotional service and not take Krishna very seriously, hoping that maybe he's a powerful demigod and that by my devotional service, he'll fulfill my desires. But as far as actually the idea of surrendering totally to Krishna, that they do not take very seriously. How to deepen their understanding of Krishna in such a way as that they actually accept that Krishna is the proprietor of everything, including my own body, or to speak of my mind or the intelligence that is being supplied to me, or even my very ego, my identification of who I am. Therefore, at the time of initiation, it's a time where we're supposed to deepen our understanding of who we are. Namely, when we get a different name at the time of initiation, it is meant to deepen our understanding that we're dasa, anudasa. That now my identity is no longer this body. My identity is now as Krishna Das or Dasi. And therefore, tad buddhayas, tad atmanas, tad nishtas, tad parayanaha, gajant yapana avritim, jnana nirduta kalmashaha. Therefore, my duty is to hear from devotees who are more experienced than I am, how to utilize my intelligence in Krishna service. Tad buddhayas, tad atmanas, how to develop my faith that when I'm performing the 9 processes of devotional service, I should deepen my 2 things, as Prabhupada writes in the Krishna book. The art of Krishna consciousness is the art of focusing one's attention and then giving one's love to Krishna. In other words, our service is not meant simply to get it done with or whatever other reason we're performing it. It's an opportunity to focus our attention on Krishna and to give our love to him. If we actually accept that he's who he says he is, then everything I'm doing is not meant for my putting myself in the center. It's meant to putting Krishna into the center. It's not meant to put my body or my mind, my feelings, or even my intelligence, that my ideas have to be put into the center. No, the whole idea is to put Krishna into the center. And when Krishna is in the center, when we understand that he should be in the center, then it's possible to cooperate with other devotees. To expect that living in the material world, even if I become an advanced devotee, that means that my idea should be put into the center. Actually, an advanced devotee thinks that because Krishna's idea should be put into the center, even if someone has another idea, which also comes from Krishna, then we try to cooperate with each other. Because what we want to do is please Krishna, not please our false ego that my idea has become prominent. Therefore, when one accepts Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead at heart, then the result will be that one becomes aware of what will actually please Krishna. And what will please Krishna, of course, is the loving exchanges between the devotees. And therefore, we could see in Srila Prabhupada's life that one thing he avoided, generally speaking, was conflicts with the devotees. Although sometimes he defended his position as the Acharya of the Hare Krishna movement, still in his relationship, even especially with his god brothers and with the devotees in the movement, he was always very, very loving and appreciative and accommodating. And rarely he had to use his position as the Acharya in order to correct a devotee who was deviating from Krishna consciousness or presented a difficulty to the movement, and Prabhupada had to use his Shakti in order to correct the situation. But generally, Prabhupada's mood was to appreciate and accept, to love and accept, to bring people closer to Krishna. And what attracts people is Krishna's love, Krishna's affection, Krishna's appreciation, Krishna's acceptance of wherever we are, and encouragement to take a next step forward towards him. But one who doesn't accept Krishna as he actually is and looks to Krishna to fulfill their own desires rather than putting Krishna into the center, Krishna does not reciprocate with them in the same way as one who is actually trying to put Krishna in the center. Therefore, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Lord Krishna himself have pointed out that advance in devotional service depends upon our consciousness, not our wealth, not our followers, not our personal assets. It begins with amadidvam, adambidvam, ahimsa, shantir, arjava. Humility. If we cannot be humble towards others and appreciate others and tolerate others, how can we appreciate Krishna? If we're envious of people who have a little bit more wealth than we have, a little bit more fame than we have, a little bit more strength than we have, how can we not be envious of Krishna, who has these qualities to an unlimited degree? Therefore, in the association of devotees, we learn humility, and humility not based upon lack of self-esteem, but humility based upon reality about based upon our actual insignificant position in this universe, at least. What to speak in whatever society we're in. There are 8 billion people on this planet, and not everyone knows us. We're quite insignificant, whoever we may think we're great. Just like I told the story of Tamal Krishna Maharaj when he was the temple commander in Los Angeles in 1968, 69. And he was quite a strong temple commander. So one day, Srila Prabhupada talked to him, and he mentioned that to Tamal Krishna Maharaj, that in the spiritual world, there's one planet that is so big that all the Vaikuntha planets can fit into that one planet. And there are unlimited Vaikuntha planets. And each Vaikuntha planet is so big that all the material universes could fit into the one Vaikuntha planet. And in the spiritual sky, sometimes a cloud appears, and in that cloud, the Supreme Lord lies down as Mahavishnu, and from his body comes unlimited universes. And in one universe, the smallest of the universe, he lies down as Garbhodakshai Vishnu, as he lies down in all the universes. But in that one universe, from his navel sprouts a lotus flower. And on the top of the lotus flower, there comes one four-headed man called Brahma, who inside of that lotus flower creates unlimited planets who float in the air, most of them, just like cotton swabs can float, just like cotton can float in the air. And in one of those planets, there is a place called, Bhardvarsha, or this Earth planet, out of those unlimited planets in this universe. And on the Earth planet, there are so many continents, and one of them is called North America. And in North America, there are so many states, and one of them is called California. And in California, there are so many cities. One of them is called Los Angeles. And in Los Angeles, there are so many streets. One of them is called La Cienega Boulevard. And on La Cienega Boulevard, there are so many houses. And in one of them, there's a temple called the Hare Krishna Temple. And in that Hare Krishna Temple, there's one temple commander, and he thinks he's controlling everything. So it's good to be reminded that the whole universe, it was not created by us. And even if it was created by us, Lord Brahma, who has 4 heads, when he came to Dwarka to see Krishna one time, when Krishna was present on the planet, he knocked at the door of the Dwarka palace. And the doorkeeper came and asked Lord Brahma, "My dear Lord Brahma, my dear sir, who are you?" He said, "I'm Lord Brahma. I've come to see Lord Krishna." So the doorkeeper said, "Please be patient. I'll go and ask Krishna if he would like to see you." So he came back after a short time, and he asked Lord Brahma, Lord Krishna asked, "Which Brahma are you?" So Lord Brahma was very surprised, because he's been in the universe since its creation. As a matter of fact, he created it, but he never met any other Brahma. So he said, "Please tell Krishna, Lord Krishna, that I'm the 4-headed Brahma, the father of the 4 Kumaras." So the gatekeeper went to Krishna and came back and said, "Yes, you can talk to Krishna." So Lord Brahma went, he had a meeting with Lord Krishna about the problems of the universe. Because anyone who's an administrator, a manager, has to spend time solving problems. Even Lord Brahma has to solve problems. At the end of the conversation with Lord Krishna, Lord Brahma inquired, "My dear Lord Krishna, you asked which Brahma I am. Are there other Brahmas in this universe?" So Lord Krishna smiled. And then by Lord Krishna's mystic potency, he called all the Brahmas from all the other universes who thought that they were alone with Krishna. So only our Brahma could see all the other Brahmas. All the other Brahmas could only see Krishna and themselves. Some Brahmas came with 10 heads, some with 100 heads, some with 10,000 heads, some with 1,000,000 heads, and some with 10 million heads. The Lord Brahma, he was amazed that although he's the creator of our universe, we happen to have the smallest universe. Small but beautiful, of course. And the other universes, the Brahmas, are so big that our Lord Brahma felt like a little squirrel in comparison to them. So that meant that Lord Brahma became a little humbled by seeing all the other amazingly enormous other Brahmas. And then Lord Krishna called all the Shivas from all the universes, all the Indras, etc., etc. And Lord Brahma became more and more humbled by the situation. Of course, that was another time when Lord Brahma had stolen the cows, the calves and the cowherd boys, and Krishna had transformed himself in the cows, in the cowherd boys. And when Lord Brahma came to see what had happened, Lord Krishna transformed himself into Vishnu forms, each calf and cowherd boy. And Lord Brahma was completely overwhelmed by Krishna's opulences. So, of course, one problem we have is that we're not so overwhelmed by Krishna's opulence. Therefore, we have to develop a little bit of a tendency towards awe and reverence towards Krishna. And that's possible. That will develop naturally in the course of time if we hear about Krishna and take it seriously. That is, appreciate how, for instance, Sri Rupa Goswami, who is an eternal associate of Krishna, approached Lord Krishna along with his brother Sanatana Goswami, putting clumps of straw in their mouth and bowing down before Lord Chaitanya. Putting straw in one's mouth was a sign of humility, of surrender. So we also have to approach Krishna in that way. Now, of course, sometimes people approach a superior and with humility, so-called humility, but actually in their hearts are actually envious. They play as if they're humble, but actually they simply want some reciprocation in order to get the opulence so that eventually they can take the place of the person that they're so-called worshiping. Prabhupada gave the example to one devotee in 1969 or something, when we first got New Vrindavan, which was not called New Vrindavan at that time, New Vrindavan. But New Vrindavan was it was like a jungle. The first time I went to New Vrindavan in 1969, along with some other devotees, then we had to walk 2 miles in mud in order to get to it. And when we got there, it was just a little shack, a very small shack. And in the attic was, who probably was living. He was seated on the bed, which was just big enough, or the room was just big enough to fit the bed. And when I went up to see him with Bhakta Bill at that time, who later on became a devotee named Bhagavan Das, Prabhupada looked at me and smiled and said, "So how do you like our jungle?" And started to laugh. So New Vrindavan was more or less the jungle. And when Prabhupada was visiting there one time, one devotee named one devotee was helping him up the hill, Bhavananda. And when he got up to the hill, Prabhupada took because Prabhupada was holding Bhavananda's hand. And when he got up the hill, Prabhupada threw his hand away and said, "Get away, I don't need you anymore." Bhavananda was quite surprised. How is this? I'm helping my spiritual master up the hill. And when we get there, he's throwing my hand away and telling me to leave. So Prabhupada looked at him and said, "Actually, this is the mood of the impersonalist. Take me up the hill, elevate me in consciousness, and when I get up there and I become as good as you are, I throw you away because I don't need you anymore, and I take your position." So this is very common in the material world. During a big festival called Durga Puja, they take the deity of Durga all around Bengal, and they worship her in not such pleasant ways, such as by sacrificing goats to please her. And they cry out to her, "My dear Devi, give me wealth, give me fame, give me this, give me that." And then at the end of the festival, they take the deity of Durga and throw her into the ocean because they don't need her anymore. So this is a mentality we have to avoid, that Krishna, he's the object of my service as long as he gives me what I want. And if I don't get what I want, if there's some impediment, if there's some obstacle in my path, if Krishna doesn't fulfill my desires, then I'll go somewhere else or look for some other way to have my desires fulfilled. No, one should understand that the goal is not to increase our material assets. The goal is to increase our consciousness, to purify our consciousness and show Krishna that we're not only trying to be humble, but we remain our humility even in the midst of obstacles. We become tolerant. And if we can remain tolerant and not become overwhelmed, whether our desires are fulfilled or not, remain obedient servants of Krishna, keeping ourselves in the mood of humility, because even in the spiritual world, everyone is humble. There is no one who's proud in the spiritual world. Our leader, Srimati Radharani, she is the most humble. She always thinks herself to be insignificant compared to the other devotees. Sometimes when she's going to meet Krishna, she hesitates, thinking that maybe Krishna wants some other gopi, that maybe I'm not qualified enough. And yet she is the personification of Krishna's pleasure potency. In other words, he has unlimited pleasure and beauty and all opulence to please the unlimited Supreme Lord. And yet she's the most humble. And Krishna, he feels himself simply to be a servant of his devotees. He feels that if he has any good qualities, it's because he worships his devotees. that in the spiritual world, everything is a reciprocation. As in this world, everything is also a reciprocation. And in the spiritual world, the reciprocation of love is based upon appreciation, which manifests itself as transcendental humility. So everyone is humble. If we see the Panchatattva, who are the manifestations of pure devotees in this world, we can understand that even we render insignificant service, still they're in the mood that they're the servants of the servants. They themselves, although they're the Supreme Lord, some of them, and some of them are one of them is the internal energy, and the other one is Srivas Thakur. He's a personification of a pure devotee. Still, just by a little insignificant service, by chanting Hare Krishna and dancing, they become the servant of their servants. Therefore, keeping in mind our position, we try to perform devotional service with tolerance, and that will help us lead to real appreciation for everyone. Anyone who's trying to perform devotional service, or as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, anyone who chants Hare Krishna even once to be understood as the best in the crowd. Therefore, Srila Rupa Goswami has advised us, if we want to make spiritual advancement, Krishneti yasya giritam manasadriyeta dikshasti chat praniti stabhajantam isham shushu shaya chabhajanam ananya anya indati sunya hridayam ipsita sangalabdya. One should mentally honor the devotees who chant the holy name. If we don't have appreciation for someone who's chanting the holy name, it means that we're simply on the neophyte platform. And if we do have appreciation for anyone who just chants the holy name, realizing how wonderful that is. Aho bhata svapachoto garyan ejivagre vartate namatubhyam. That it takes many lifetimes of pious activities for the holy name to appear on someone's tongue, even if chanted imperfectly. So to appreciate the people who are chanting Hare Krishna, appreciate the devotees who are chanting Hare Krishna, although they may not be strictly following, still some appreciation should be there, that they're on a path which can lead them back to Krishna. And for those who are actually chanting Hare Krishna sincerely, who are following the principles of devotional service, who have been initiated and trying to give up their false ego and develop their real ego as the servant of Krishna, one should learn how to cooperate with them. The worst thing is to get into a conflict with a devotee, because that is it's called aparad. If we want to compromise, if we want to appreciate, if we want to work together in a harmonious way with other devotees, then dadami buddhi yogam tam. Then Krishna will give us all intelligence how to develop a loving relationship with the other devotee. And if we forget that that's the object, that's what we're trying to accomplish, then we'll spend our lives trying to either make up for all the broken relationships that we have with others, or breaking even the relationships that we have. In other words, Krishna will give the intelligence, if one is trying to get intelligence, how to develop loving relationships with our inferiors, with our equals, and especially taking shelter and guidance of anyone who's superior to us in steadiness and enthusiasm and bhakti. Then that means we're taking Krishna seriously. And Krishna will help us understand him more seriously, because that's what Krishna takes seriously. Krishna only comes to help develop people's faith and love for him. And if we develop faith and love for others in relationship to Krishna, then Krishna will give us all help and guidance how to do that. Vidami Buddhi Yogam Tam. That's called Bhakti Yoga or Buddhi Yoga. Now, there are others mentioned in this verse, which I didn't go into in detail, but everyone who is a human being, at least, is trying to make advancement in some system of human life. But if they don't know about Krishna, their so-called advancement is futile. Because whatever they gain, materially speaking, will be destroyed at the time, will be taken away from them at the time of their leaving the body. Whatever knowledge they have cultivated without Krishna consciousness can also be lost in the course of time. One may become a very learned professor with many degrees, but if one is sinful because of lack of following Krishna's directions, one may wind up in another species of life. Or when they take a birth in a lower family and the learned mathematical genius in the next lifetime can't figure out how 1 + 1 is equal to 2 anymore. Therefore, without Krishna's association, without Krishna's guidance, one is very much, especially in Kali Yuga, apt to become associated with persons who are envious of Krishna. As a matter of fact, practically the whole world is envious of Krishna, is denying Krishna's existence, and who are being bewildered or deluded by the lower modes of nature, and therefore gradually degrading themselves. When they hear that Krishna is a cowherd boy, they think, a cowherd boy, what a low-class occupation. He has so many cows, but he doesn't eat any of them. What a waste of time. He can open up so many McDonald's, but he doesn't do it, so he's less intelligent. So they have no appreciation for even the most basic principles of human life, protecting the cows, developing higher consciousness, having a simple living based upon cow protection, lack of, well, we could say that due to the emphasis on technology, the emphasis on industrialization, they're going further and further away from the actual goal of life, which is not to develop love for machines, is to develop love for God, Krishna, along with everyone else. However much we may imagine that the machine is in love with me, it's simply another form of illusion. We can only actually develop love for Krishna, and in relation with Krishna, we can love everyone else. We're also expansions of Krishna. But if we don't water the root of the tree, Krishna, then all our efforts of watering each leaf and branch will simply turn out to be futile. Therefore, the conclusion is that those who are engaged in Krishna's service, and if they develop a proper understanding, which doesn't require great intellectual development, requires some humility, some tolerance, some appreciation, can further advance towards the goal of life and eventually become liberated and develop love for Krishna and love for everyone else too. So I'll stop there. Thank you. Any questions or comments? Okay. Who is that there? Parthasarthi Das.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. First of all, very sorry that I came late to the class. I just came from the farm. Today we were celebrating 44 years of the installation of the Lordship's Sushi Radha Govardhandari. It was a very beautiful festival. And this class just make me think that how when devotees work cooperatively, they are applying, like you said, no, the Dhammi, Buddhi, Yoga, and Dhamma. Krishna give them intelligence to work in cooperation and not fighting, like sometimes we see, in some places that the congregation is divided into groups and they don't want to
Don't forget
work.
that your question, if it's a question, Mother
Yeah,
Lavanda.
The thing is that
Parthasarthi,
the, yeah.
Mother Lavandalata is translating the class into Russian. You have to speak slow.
I'm sorry. I'm very sorry. I'm very sorry. Right. So my question is, how can we act in such a way that we don't get into apparatus with the temple management when the congregation is a little bit sick and tired of things that are not happening, like for example temple construction or projects that are good for the community of Vaishnavas, and they at the beginning they offer their life and soul to work together cooperatively, but then they feel a little bit cheated. So how can we try to advise them to be more patient and tolerant, no? Because I saw with my own eyes that this happened. And in comparison of what I just said to you, that I just came from this beautiful festival in the farm, and you can see that everything works smoothly and everyone help each other. They offer 44 cakes today for the lordships, and everyone was really happy. Nice kirtan, nice class, nice prasada. So really, I don't understand. No, how can we?
Okay, I think we know what the question is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
So we have to make spiritual advancement ourselves. We shouldn't worry about what everyone else is doing. We should worry about where my consciousness is. If we become too much concerned with other devotees getting into conflict, and that's what we dwell on, is the conflicts, then we'll forget that the solution to the conflicts is to focus on our own minds on Krishna and give our love to him. But we have to become happy in Krishna consciousness. We have to learn techniques of Krishna consciousness, and then at least in our own lives, we'll become Krishna conscious. And if we actually become Krishna conscious, then others may or may not turn to us and ask us how to solve their own conflicts. But we can't solve anyone's conflict just by noticing the conflicts and becoming disturbed by them. So Krishna has given us a process. We follow it strictly and sincerely and try to set a good example for others. Then we'll be doing the best we can to serve Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mission and Srila Prabhupada. And if we get involved in the conflicts ourselves, then we won't be able to solve our own problems. We'll simply add to them.
Thank you so much,
Anything
Guru
else?
Maharaj.
Hare Krishna, thank you. Anything else?
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj, humble obeisances. Srila Prabhupada, thank you for your class. First question, what are the chances for the people with impersonalist philosophy and consciousness, because it seems that it's the most difficult that they accept the authority of Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and especially those who are more deeply into the practice of impersonal philosophy?
Yes, thank you for the question. One time Brahmananda Prabhu stated that in the early classes, if we listened to them, often Prabhupada would talk against the impersonalists. the Brahmananda was wondering who these impersonalists are. Maybe they were a group of people in India that Prabhupada had a conflict with, and that even when he came to America, he couldn't forget the conflict. And therefore he kept on criticizing them, even in classes in 26 Second Avenue. And then one day, after listening to a class, Brahmananda Prabhu realized that actually the impersonalists that Prabhupada was talking about were sitting in the class. Therefore, our mantra is Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paskadyade Siddharne. Prabhupada has come here to deliver the impersonalists and the voidists. So that tendency is there in all of us. Only when we develop actually love for Krishna and surrender to Krishna, then we'll actually become our normal personality. So this is the process. Any impersonalist can become Krishna conscious and become a personalist. Now, of course, there's some impersonalists who are actually envious of Krishna. They know about him, but they've dedicated their lives to defeating him, to getting rid of him. So that is not within our realm of possibility of helping them. But most of the impersonalists in the material world, they just are lacking knowledge, lacking good association, and especially in this age, they're lacking association with the holy name. So that's what we try to give them. Krishna himself has appeared as the holy name, and he appeared as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, has given us the example and the instructions how to chant the holy name, so we can all become lovers of Krishna and become personalists again. So I think I'll stop there. Thank you very much. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaura Premanande.
His Holiness Prahladananda Swami Maharaj ki
Jai.
Thank you.